Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Migrant Women Reality Watch number 28. Today I have with me Selen. Selen is one of our members, and we invited her today because we will be talking about obstetrical and gynecological violence towards women. Before we start, and before I welcome Selen in the way that she deserves, I am just going to frame this conversation. So basically, as you may or may not know, we have been holding these Migrant Women Reality Watches in the framework of the International Day for the Elimination of All Forms of Violence Against Women and Girls. So we decided to do this series because we realized that there's a lot of types of violence that are not duly addressed, either in the media, but also inside the feminist movement and inside the migrant women's movement as well. And so we're making a sort of state of the art of the different violences that compose the continuum of male violence against women and girls. And this is why we have our very special member with us here today. Just as a reminder, please feel free to interact with me and Selen in the comment section. If you have any question, we will do our best to address those questions in the end or throughout the conversation if we see that it fits in there. We would also like to remind you that this is being live streamed from a platform that we use. So please feel free to share any video, to share this video on your wall or with your friends or in relevant groups. We really encourage that. If by any chance some people don't have the chance to attend, we always upload our videos to our YouTube channel. So you can just type European Network of Migrant Women on YouTube and you will find us, and there you can find all the Migrant Women Reality Watch video. So yeah, welcome Selen. Thank you for being here with us today.
Hello, Adriana. It's my pleasure to be with you. Nice seeing you, your smiling face.
Nice seeing you too, and I love the colors that you chose for today. They really stand out. That's very nice. Selen, when I invite our guests over here at the Migrant Women Reality Watch, I always give them the introduction. I give them the chance to introduce themselves, because since we are a network of migrant women and we believe in self-representation, I also think that it's just for you to present yourself. But for those who are watching, and before I get onto that, Selen is from Turkey. She is one of our members from Turkey. Right now, she's living in France, where she is a candidate of a PhD candidate of social anthropology. The main interests of Selen being medical anthropology and social movements. We will address all that throughout the talk, and you will understand. And the very interesting and unique thing about Selen is that she is a doula and an activist for a woman's reproductive health rights. But with that being said, Selen, I really prefer for you to present yourself, especially because there are some Turkish names that I am very much incapable of pronouncing, such as your university, for example. So I prefer you to do that instead of me. So welcome, Selen. Thank you. And the first thing I'm going to ask you basically is for you to introduce yourself and the work that you do.
Thank you, Adriana, for organizing these talks and all the effort you put in the feminist women and for the struggle of the immigrant women in Europe. I'm really honored to be with you today, and I'm honored to be part of the European Network of Migrant Women. I hope today I can express myself shortly and using the just words, because really today I was preparing myself and I started taking notes, and I realized that I took like 15 pages of side notes to the things that I would like to talk today. And so I said, okay, that's pretty long, so I should find a short way to express myself. First of all, I wear several hats, as we say. So I'm originally from Turkey. I grew up in Istanbul. I studied philosophy, and then I made a master's in the history of Turkish Republic, mainly related with the social work and regarding mainly children and family. And now I live, after having lived in various countries, now I'm settled in France, in the south of France, close to Montpellier. But when I became part of the network, I was living in Marseille because I have a daughter. I'm a mother. So I'm a researcher, I'm a mother, I'm a doula, I'm an activist. So I have all these, I think, are I feel and that they are enriching me. At the same time, of course, like when we are doing a research, it's always interesting that to do a research about a subject that we are involved in. So I will just a bit explain my how I became involved in this subject. Actually, I gave birth to my daughter 10 years ago in Istanbul, and it was a C-section birth, although it wasn't in my desire very much. And after that, I was doing my PhD study, and I as part of a course that I took about women in Turkey, I decided to make a research paper about the high C-section rates in Turkey, because actually at the time I gave birth, I didn't know about this, but actually half of the women in Turkey, they give birth by C-section, cesarean. And Turkey being the champion of C-section birth among the OECD countries. So the rate of C-sections today is 53%. So more than half of the women give birth by C-section. That and I was quite interested to find out why and how this happens. So I started my research in sociology department about the childbirth experience of women. But actually, first I did a field work about interviewing 4 women, one a doula, the other a midwife, and one woman who gave birth, and another woman who is a gynecologist. And this field work actually led me to widen the let's say the problematic of the research from C-sections to a general medicalization of childbirth. What is being discussed? It's not new. It has been discussed for a while, so. For a long time, I mean, the name of my thesis is like the childbirth narratives of women and medicalization of childbirth in Turkey. And I interviewed 40 women from various sections of the society. So there are like women who gave birth at the age of 16 and women who gave birth at the age of 40, 41. And these women, some of these women were living in the suburbs of Istanbul, coming from low class, let's say lower classes with a low education. There was even one woman who has never been to school, who learned how to read and write herself, actually. But also there were women who have done their PhDs, who are university scholars. So that was quite a big range of population. It was which provided a very rich data for me. And as I do the research, I came across the fact that actually there was quite a lot of mistreatment of women around childbirth practices during pregnancy, during childbirth, or after childbirth, and which we call today obstetrical violence. So it's part of. So my research is not only about obstetrical violence, as we will talk today. Of course, it's really about how women become mothers. So I'm in my thesis, which is I'm still writing. I started the research in Turkey, and now I'm going to defend the thesis in France. So I'm writing it in French, which is taking a bit longer than expected, of course, with all the changes in my personal life. But I mean, when the thesis is finished, it will be something that starts from how women decide to become mothers, and how we, so all throughout pregnancy, childbirth, and the postnatal period. And sorry. So as doing my research, I came across this something that I heard about already, but the training to become a doula. And at the beginning, to be honest, I was pretty skeptic about it. As like, it's okay, it's this new thing, neoliberal, that, okay, I pay a doula, now she will be with me. But I was quite curious, so I said, okay, I will participate in this training. And of course, it was much different than what I was thinking as a prejudice. And it really gave me a lot of insight. And it helped me also to make a participant observation of childbirth practices in Turkey as elsewhere, because there was a short period, like 1.5 years, I lived in Cambodia, where I could practice, where I could work as a doula voluntarily, I can say, yeah.
Just for the sake of clarity for our audience and for me as well, what is the difference between a doula and a midwife?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. Actually, doula is a non-medical. The first clarity we should make between a midwife and a doula is a non-medical support. So providing any medical information or intervention is beyond the responsibility and the ethics of doula. So any non-medical support, emotional support, information before childbirth, and advocacy, that's also an important part of doula, because sometimes doulas might find themselves in a position to support the rights of women during birth or around birth. And I like the term holding space. I don't know if it makes clarity, but like to provide a safe and compassionate space, if we can, for women during their period where they need a lot of support, is also important aspect of, I think, what I can say generally as a doula is, holding a space, safe space for the mother to be, and also the child to be born, and even also the father, if he's there and if he needs. Mm-hmm.
And did you practice being a doula in Cambodia, but also here in Western Europe, in France, for example, or in Turkey?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, just one thing I would like to emphasize, because the word doula is strange for people who don't know it, and actually doula is a Greek word. Yesterday I met a woman who grew up in Greece, and I was telling her, and she was looking at me with a strange face, because doula in Greek, it means slave, women's slave.
Oh, wow.
So this is a kind of a debate. There are people who don't want to call this profession a doula, because it's kind of it refers to slavery. But actually, the person who first used this concept is an American anthropologist and feminist, and she was in 1969. She published. It's the first time that we use the word doula appearing in such context. She made a research about breastfeeding, and she she found out that if women are supported during their breastfeeding period, the results are much better. And she named this profession, this support, as a doula support. But there are, especially in Greece or in countries where this word has this slavery connotation, they prefer to use another word like paramana, which means support, or yeah. And so it's quite doulas are pretty known in countries where rather Anglo-Saxophone countries, I can say, in US or United Kingdom. In US, there are some states which are thinking or providing doula support in hospitals, or in UK also sometimes, or there are some insurances which would accept to take doula services as part of their insurance framework. But other than that, generally doulas are an extra paid work, and which unfortunately limits the access to women from higher income levels, or who can afford to pay an extra support. Of course, we can argue that instead of maybe buying very expensive clothes for babies, you can afford it. Or there are some doulas, they make some kind of like bartering their services. Okay, if you don't have money to make, but you want to have a doula with you, in that case, maybe you can find a way to exchange your something. You can do something for the doula, kind of. But other than that, it's not like a medical service that is provided in the hospital, like a midwife or a gynecologist.
Okay, so it's considered, let's say, an additional service for the mother to be and the extended family. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it doesn't, I really like what you say about this, access to information and advocacy, because I think this is something that we're going to talk about, but I think it's just such a crucial part of being a mother. I mean, I'm not a mother myself, but I can imagine that it must be very scary, especially if you have not very good circumstances. So yeah, I find that concept very interesting. In my country, in Brazil, we have a big community of doulas, but that's because there is a super big level of C-section births, because the medical staff encourages that, because it's less, less expensive for the state, but also because there's a lot of the context in which mothers are to give birth is not the best, so they have these community of doulas to support them. And I was wondering if maybe you don't have an answer for this, but do you think that doulas are more present in countries where obstetrical violence is highest, or there is no relation between that, you think?
Yeah, it's good. I was going to tell you about that also, because I know you're originally from Brazil. Actually, Brazil and Turkey, we are computing in terms of C-section, high C-section levels. And actually, I can't tell you about the correlation between obstetrical violence and the doulas in that way. But there is a correlation between in the countries where there is more respect for women and women's rights, there is less obstetrical violence. This is no big deal to think about, because actually respect for women in general goes hand in hand for respect for women during childbirth. So it's part of a general approach, I would say. About doulas and obstetrical violence, I would maybe put it in another way. There is a possibility that the more there is doula support, or the more there is support which is it doesn't have to be a doula, but a support which is conscious and respectful for the woman, yes, there will be less violence during birth.
Okay, thank you for that, and sorry for the maybe crazy question, but I was just wondering if there was a correlation, and I will actually research on that because it's something that stuck in me. Okay, thank you for that little first presentation and for making the distinction between the two, because I think that a lot of people don't have access to this information, or it's still a bit confusing. Since the topic of today is going to be gynecological and obstetrical violence, I was also wondering if you could provide more or less, if you could explain what is, according to you or to your practice, what does it mean that when a woman has suffered gynecological violence? What is is there a high rate of gynecological violence in Europe or in Turkey more specifically? But I'm also wondering about Europe because our audience comes from various countries in Europe.
Actually, of course, a criticism of violence against women or during birth or medicalization is not a very new thing. It has been some decades that researchers or feminists have been talking about women's rights, not only during birth, but in general in reproductive rights of women. There was like the second wave of feminism, which also the American, in the USA, there was the women's health movement, which was quite important in terms of questioning all these. Yet what is quite new about this concept of the obstetrical violence is a new legal term, which was officially formulated in 2007 in Venezuela, very interestingly. So, first time in Venezuela, in the Article 51 of the Organic Law on Women's Rights for a Life Free of Violence. There it is. I will quote if you want, so it's easier to maybe understand. Obstetric violence is the appropriation of the body and the reproductive processes of women by health personnel, bringing with it the loss of autonomy and the ability to decide freely about the bodies and about their bodies and sexuality. So under Venezuela's law, these acts by health personnel are now, since 2007, are considered as obstetric violence. These are untimely and ineffective attention to obstetric emergencies. So the lack of timely intervention, forcing women to give birth in a supine position if not necessary. This is the position that is quite against the gravity, so actually which makes birth more difficult, but it is actually quite a misogynist position, because it was first time it was the French, it is said that it's the French king Louis, I think 16 or 14, I always confuse those, but he wanted to watch his wife or giving birth, so he told them to lie the women so he can see easily. So actually this position was a male king who wanted to see the woman giving birth, who didn't want to go down, because otherwise women were giving birth in the position that was most comfortable for them. It's so just forcing any position to woman, especially to give birth, which is not comfortable for her, is now considered as an obstetric violence. Also, any if impeding early attachment of child mom without medical cause, which means taking the baby away from the mother, altering the natural process of low-risk delivery with acceleration techniques, unless women are informed and can accurately consent. So this is for the medical staff to gain time. Sometimes they use methods to accelerate and change the natural timing of birth. And also using cesarean section when natural birth is possible, unless women consented. So these are quite clear and very important elements of obstetrical violence. And one thing that is there, which I think includes all forms of violence against women, which is the aspect of consent. So generally in my research also, that that the women I interviewed, they explained to me, often the medical interventions that are done, which I will not go into detail right now, but there is a lack of consent. So they don't ask actually for consent before doing an episiotomy. They don't ask for consent before giving synthetic oxytocin, which is a hormone which is necessary, but it should be used when it is really necessary. And there we go actually to the discussion of medicalization. I don't know if you want to ask another question, or shall I continue? Maybe before going on to the critics of medicalization, I can continue why yes, the obstetric violence actually constitutes is a structural violence, because it is harm promoted by social structures and institutions by disempowering and harming women instead of supporting them. And like most cases of structural violence, obstetric violence is hard to define because it's subtle, pervasive, naturalized, normalized, and institutionalized. So women who have suffered from obstetrical violence some of them have gone as far as calling it birth rape. And well, it's another debate, because I read also comments of women who have gone through rape and who find that calling obstetrical violence birth rape, might be minimizing the experience of real rape. But that's another debate that maybe we don't need to go in the details. But the people who call it, first of all, there are some women who feel that they have, as if they have been raped. So this is their feeling that I respect. And also one aspect about rape is that because it's more about power than sex. So there is this power aspect of male power, mainly male power, but I should also emphasize that it's not always men working in the hospital that are using, let's say, violence against women during childbirth. It can be, and it is the case in several cases, that it's the midwife who is working in the hospital who is using violence. It can be a verbal violence, or it can be a physical violence. It can be humiliation. It can be other aspects. But yes, and why is this woman using violence or is mistreating another woman is, I think, a very important question that is structural. I mean, it's also related with the work conditions that actually midwives in Turkey are very, very disrespectful. That's actually is like a circle of violence. The doctor who has a higher authority is using violence against the midwife, and the midwife is using the violence. That's like this circle of violence that we know, like the father is using violence against the wife, and the wife is using violence against the children, and the children are using violence against the animals. So it's this vicious circle of violence there. And also they are badly paid. There is a lot of workload, and also there is a general culture of violence when we are talking about, for example, Turkey. Yeah. And you can cut me because I can talk for hours.
No, I wanted to step in because as a doula, then since you are also involved in the non-medical, then you have not the power, but you have the ability to intervene on behalf of the woman if she has suffered obstetric violence, for example. You can do advocacy work and things like that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can if we can. There's a nice article written by a doula. I just read it today again, that I translated actually from English to Turkish, which is called Birth, Rape and Doula, which is actually like an inter-doula conversation that she's telling what can doulas do when they are witnessing a violence. She calls it birth rape, but I mean, let's say violence, whatever. You know what I mean? We know what we're talking about. And so, actually, it's there are things we can do, but there are things we cannot do. Yeah. So actually, because we don't have a status and we don't have a power in the system of the medical system. Actually, doulas, we are quite, we don't have an official status, yes. So what we can do, it depends very much on our abilities, it depends on the situation, it depends on the circumstances. And yes, but it is possible, I mean, first of all, to be next to the women and to see to give the support that we can give, that she feels, that make her feel that she's understood, is a very important thing, I think, in the very beginning. Otherwise, it really depends on, you asked me about my experience, my personal experience. I will just talk shortly about one experience I had, which is quite for me and very teaching experience. I was supposed to give a massage to a young pregnant Cambodian woman that I didn't know before, but somehow her contractions have already started, so I had to go to the hospital, and I found myself in a situation that she's giving birth, a premature birth, and she was a very poor and young woman. And what happened was, that was a moment they had left the baby around, just on the counter like that, and the young father was looking at me with red eyes, crying like the baby is dead, and with a half English. And I was like looking, but first thing I saw was the baby. The heartbeat was like the hearts of the babies are one of the first. They are big, and I saw that big thing still pumping, and I was like, I went crazy. So I went to the midwives there. I don't speak Cambodian. Finally, they let me talk to a doctor who was speaking French, because many doctors in Cambodia, they study at least 1 year in France. They have like a exchange program. And he first didn't want to take the baby into reanimation unit, because he was like saying, oh, it's impossible in Cambodia to that the baby survives. It was like a 900 grams baby born in the 27th or 26th week of pregnancy. Normally, we give birth after the 40 at least 40 weeks of pregnancy. And finally I found myself in a position to actually defend the living rights of this baby and the parents. And the doctor's justification was like, they are young and they can make another baby. And I was, okay, it's a long story, because finally, and I was like, I thought he asks for money, and he was saying, we don't have the means in Cambodia. So I was like, okay, we'll give you money if you want money. So, and anyway, finally they accepted the baby in the hospital, but the family didn't have the money. So I shared this in Facebook, and it became like a global fundraising thing. And my friends in Turkey and family and everyone, people who know me and who don't know me, who started sending money, and we could pay the hospital, because it was like yes, because the right to health it costs in many countries that are not social states. So actually maybe the doctor had that in mind. He was, because a few days later he saw me that the baby is living, and he was like saying, oh, the baby is living, it's good. And then he was like, it hurt me, and I was crying, of course. He said, I love babies also. I mean, he's a pediatrician, and he's like, why should he let a baby die? It's not, I know that in his heart he's a good person. I'm just telling this story to underline the fact that when we are talking about violence or any mistreatment of babies or children or women, we are not talking about that they are evil, the health personnel, because of course they are, then they found themselves in a defensive situation to say, we are doing our jobs and we are trying to save the babies, or we are trying to do our job in the best way. Yes, in my experience, yes, the doctors, the midwives, the nurses, and all the health personnel, as we know, they are doing their best in their limited knowledge and in their limited capacities and the means that they and the structure that they work. So the structure that this doctor worked, maybe they were, I don't know, but maybe they were telling them not to accept babies from poor families, I don't know, or not to take the risk. And it is this risk. I mean, he was also telling me that maybe the baby is saved, but there is the risk of being handicapped. So there is those scientific percentages that, baby is born at 900 grams, they have the risk of possible handicap, disabilities. So it is complicated, and we are not in a so just to say that when we are talking about violence or critique of medicalization, we are not there to to blame the midwives, nurses, or the obstetricians who are doing their jobs.
Mm-hmm. It's about putting the incident or the situation in a context where you see, that's what you were saying before, it's systemic violence, it's institutional violence. So it's not about maybe analyzing case by case, which I think is important, mm-hmm. because you yourself, you had interview with this woman, interview with the other woman, but it's about producing a conclusion based on the patriarchal system that we have. I think it's important.
Yeah, and I think it's important, first of all, that we start to talk about it. Just like I think there is a big awakening on the side of women all around the world, that we are the word is liberated. Now we are talking, at least in Turkey, but I know all around, that we start to talk about what we are going through, our experiences, and this is also important. And just I wanted to finish, after that Venezuela accepted obstetrical violence, it became like a kind of a domino effect. And there is now, starting from 2014, there are 5 obstetric violence observatories founded in Chile, Spain, Argentina, Colombia, and France.
Mm-hmm.
And they released a common statement declaring obstetric violence as one of the most invisible and naturalized forms of violence against women and a serious violation of human rights. And in October 2019, Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe adopted a resolution on obstetrical and gynecological violence. So it's just a resolution, so it's not binding. Nevertheless, it constitutes a major step for political recognition of obstetrical violence. So these are recent changes in Europe and in the world, which are, I think, important steps.
Mm-hmm. Very much. Even if it's not binding, it's an acknowledgement of a situation and then an acknowledgement of a problem in the system. That's very good. I had no idea about these, and I think it's very interesting, just a side comment, that besides France, that these observatories are in Spanish-speaking countries.
Yeah.
Specifically Latin America. I think it's very good for the women there, considering what they suffer, and not just the state of the medical system, but everything that has to do with the economy of women, how women go through birth with those resources, with what they have or not. Because Latin America is a continent where the class is very marked. But I think that this phenomenon of obstetric violence, it doesn't, I mean, maybe it affects more women of lower social classes. But that's actually what I wanted to say.
Exactly. Actually, yes, you are right. That's a very good point. The movement against obstetrical violence started in Latin countries, let's say in Spanish speaking, in Venezuela, in Argentina, Chile. And when I was searching for some photos, and I saw that actually as a movement, I saw the only manifestations I saw against obstetrical violence recently, they were in Spanish speaking countries. And I think, I mean, that's a general observation I make, but I might be mistaken. But I think, of course, where in the countries where there is more pressure, more oppression against women, there is now a big movement, like in Turkey, for example. In Turkey, okay, we have maybe this will come to our topic about our book, but there's a big oppression against women. I can say that there's neoliberalism, there is the authoritarian government, there is the culture, there is the religion. So there is an oppression on women. At the same time, compared to let's say I'd say now that I'm in France, I have been to the 8th of March demonstrations in Turkey and in France. And in Turkey, we have like thousands in the streets and against the police. I mean, the police is putting gas and everything, but women are not leaving the place. We have a big, I can say we have an important movement of women and feminists in Turkey. And because it is hurting us. I mean, this violence, male violence of the state is, we are oppressed and we live it every day. And just to give you one example, within 9-10 years, between 2010 and 2019, 3,000 women in Turkey were killed by men.
3,000.
Yeah, we are dying. I mean, there is in this violence. And just in 2019, for example, it was 474 women who were killed. And the only year that the number of murder was lowest was in 2011. That was the year that Istanbul Convention was signed. And now the Turkish president is with Turkey is withdrawing from the Istanbul Convention, which was the only thing that was one of the only things that was protecting women. So yeah,
at legal level, at least that's what you women could rely on if you had to. We've been watching with a lot of worry with what's been happening, and just the situation is just so desperate in a way, because like you said, women are dying, and with the withdrawal is just a clear sign that women's rights are just not important. I am sorry about that, by the way. You were talking about before the medicalization of childbirth. We don't have a lot of time, but I wanted to, because we know that you contributed to this book called The Politics of the Female Body in Contemporary Turkey. So I was wondering if you could tell us a bit more about that, where we can get it, the book, if it's possible, so I can share it with our audience. What is more or less, what did you contribute in the chapter that you wrote?
Actually, I still didn't receive the book. It's published in UK, so it's I was supposed to receive it today, so I was hoping to show it, find the final version. It's just it's recently published. So it's a book which is an enlarged outcome of an international symposium which was held in Germany in 2018, and it's a book prepared by 4 editors and 14 writers, all of these women from Turkey. And it's written in English. And this book is dedicated to all the women in Turkey who lost their lives as a result of patriarchal violence, and to all the feminist activists of Turkey who dedicate their lives to better the lives of women in Turkey. And so, it illustrates the book so it's a compilation of different articles which deal with the neoliberal modes of governing women's bodies and how they come together with religious, conservative, and authoritarian measures in contemporary Turkey. And focusing on the fields of reproduction, maternity, and sexuality, we propose a feminist intervention into the domain of increasingly hegemonic discourses on the female body that take place in medical establishments, courtrooms, and public discussions. My contribution in this book is about it's an article called "The Tactics of Women Up Against Obstetrical Violence and the Medicalization of Childbirth in Turkey." And it's about women's experiences in birth and operation rooms. So as a documentation of the over-medicalization of childbirth, the intimate accounts of the women I interviewed described how women feel disrespected, humiliated, and intimidated. But also, so there is like some examples of how women are mistreated during childbirth. But at the same time, as an analysis, I don't like victimization. So anyway, as women, we are being infantilized, there's infantilization, humiliation, okay. But, and it's not the case that we end up being the victims. So actually, I think the journey of being a woman or as a woman, it's kind of our journey of overcoming this victimization. So I try to see how in their struggle these women actually resist in a way this kind of subordination. And of course, at least not with the women I interviewed, there is not a movement against obstetrical violence, not yet on Turkey. And I think I'm one of the first people to talk about it in the Turkish case. Yet I see that how in their, I call it as a tactics. So the women have different tactics to be able to survive with this I want to say, how do they overcome this violence or possibility of violence during childbirth? So the article is about this. And it's important because what happens is women live through that violence, for example, or they go through an experience that they didn't want to go through, or they weren't planning to, they don't want to. And then there is like an anger, sadness, or disappointment which arises. But also because it's a moment of life where there is the baby, and everyone is like, okay, the baby is healthy, you are healthy, so what the big deal? And so all these negative emotions, they are swept under the rug, and they become, so many women, they told me that actually they never really talked in so much detail about their childbirth experience before. And some of them said it was like a therapy for me, because it was something that helped me to talk about and speak about this experience. And some of the women of course, that doesn't mean that all the women are going through such experience or that all the women are unhappy about the medicalization, but processes that are, of course, without consent. But the women who, some of the experiences were quite violent. Trauma. Yes, there's the trauma after that. And for example, one of the women I interviewed, she was so badly treated during her childbirth that she didn't want to have a child again. Although she would want to, she didn't want to go back to that hospital or live that experience again. And this is called, actually, there's a name for it in psychology, which is called tocophobia. It's this pathological fear of pregnancy. And it can be that some women, especially women who have been abused in one part in their lives, they have the tendency to have that fear of pregnancy and giving birth. This is called the first level primary tocophobia, but there's also a secondary, which is like you give women who have been traumatized in their childbirth experience, they don't want to, they have the fear of giving birth. And some women that I interviewed, at least two of them, had that experience. And one of these women, she actually she felt so much humiliated that it was very difficult, and also she didn't have enough support. And also, well, finally, what happened was she tried to suicide, and it was her husband who came and who broke the bathroom to find her, almost dying. And then she went through a therapy where she found out that actually when she was a young girl, she was violated. She went through rape, and that was also one thing that is like triggered during birth. If we had gone through a sexual abuse, this increases the risk of women having traumatizing childbirth. But the good news is she went through a therapy. She, found support, and she gave a second time. She gave herself a second chance, and her second birth was quite good, and she was supported. She found, but it took her 5 years to prepare for her second birth, going through different therapies and courses and yeah.
Mm-hmm. And this is a woman that you accompanied, that you interviewed, right?
That's actually, yes, I interviewed for my thesis research.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We're really running out of time now. I'm just going to ask you a last question. Do you think you can draw maybe any conclusions from your research as of now? Because you said that you interviewed women from low socioeconomic backgrounds, others that were quite eased. Is there a common thread? And yeah, if you want to give us a last conclusion or last words regarding your research and something that we can be attentive to, or whatever you might want to share.
Mm-hmm. I think women who are from lower social classes, and women who are less educated, women who are let's say from minority. It can be, in the case of Europe, immigrant women, also women with disabilities. They have the tendency to face obstetrical violence more than the other women. And of course, there was an important study that I would like to, I can send you the link if you want, which is like which was published in the website of World Health Organization. So, which includes more than 16 countries and 15,000 women, and where they say that the continuous support provided by somebody who is not part of the hospital staff It can be doulas or another companion of women's choice, what we call a continuous labor support. So, which means that there is a woman, there's somebody accompanying this woman all throughout her childbirth, the labor. They are, they are less likely to use pain medications. They were more likely to be satisfied. They had shorter labors. The babies were less likely to have low 5-minute Apgar scores, which means that they are in a better health condition. And so there is evidence that support for women, it can be a doula, what we call, but it can be another person, is necessary. So of course, I mean, that there is midwives. I mean, I say doula, sometimes there's a misunderstanding because there are midwives, but in the hospital, the midwives are taking care of how many other women at the same time, so they cannot stay all the time. But if it can be a midwife who is trained to support her emotionally and in all the aspects of in all aspects that are not only medical, it can be a midwife, it can be another woman, it can be a nurse, but just somebody who is there for the women to understand her, to give her compassion, to create a safe environment. I think it's is important. Was that your question? So
yeah, that's good.
Yeah. I think, yeah, of course, that's not the only solution. We couldn't go into all the details, but I mean, the working conditions in the hospital, anyway, that the childbirth takes place in hospital like that, it's traumatizing itself, because actually birth and pregnancy are not illnesses. So why not places where women can give birth, which like they are called different names, but birth houses, as they call it, is one thing. And also I think people who are working in the childbirth environment, in the maternity wards, they need to be trained for women's rights and human rights and and communication skills, because women actually are more important than, for example, if they had C-sections, or if, of course, if there's episiotomy is cutting without their consent, or other any intervention, medical intervention without consent should be avoided. But also communication is very important. Women who feel that there was a good communication and understanding between the healthcare provider feel satisfied about her birth. So
those are great last words. I really like the idea of birth houses, and I never really thought about the fact that, yeah, what you said, birth and pregnancies are not illnesses. So why would we be having those in a space that is meant to be treating other illnesses?
Yeah, in France, there is some good news. There are midwives who have created in some cities, some areas, which, I mean, the entry, it's close, it's connected, it's like an annex to the hospital. So it's connected to the hospital, which means that there is a door in case of emergency. They can go directly to the operation room to have a C-section. But other than that, the entrance is not the entrance of the hospital. So the pregnant woman and the woman who's going to give birth, she doesn't go through the hospital corridors, and where there's full of sick people, and where it's full of also viruses. And today with the COVID situation, we see that actually that the necessity of maternities being separated from the hospital. Yet I think it's a good idea that it's close to the hospital, because yes, there are childbirth can be it can be necessary to have a C-section. It can be, emergency cases exist. So it's important, I think, to be connected to the hospital, or yeah, or easy access. I mean, anyway, easy access. Yeah.
I think I will invite you once again so we can have a talk on childbirth during COVID, because that is a very specific situation that we were not prepared for, and we have a lot of accounts of women actually feeling very violated and going through a lot of violences. What you said, women being detached from their babies as soon as they give birth, women being, full of, like with masks while giving birth. Those are things that we have been alerted to. Unfortunately, we don't have the time, but I would love to invite you.
That's important. Yeah, doulas, many doulas, they couldn't accompany women because it was restricted. For example, only family members, some mainly due to COVID also. So yeah, this is a very, very important subject. And yeah, there's so much to talk about. Like, I feel I could only say maybe 1% of the things that maybe I wish to share, but I just want to add something, because before I listened to Meshar Ani Ezohe, that you interviewed, and actually I saw how, even though we were talking about things that seemingly were different, and so much, there were so many things that were in common when I listened to their interviews. And like when Ezoe was talking about stigmatization of Nigerian women in sex trafficking, or Meshar, I think she said women who aren't married don't have access to sexual health services in Saudi Arabia, or Hani was talking about women who experience domestic violence. They don't know what to do, and they freeze. And this is something that that we observe when women who go through obstetric violence, because none of the women that I interview that tell me they didn't make any legal step, or they didn't go and face the doctor. They just left it there. They didn't want to think about it, but it stayed there, and this experience stayed disturbing them.
I'm very glad, first of all, that you made the connection to those three, because I mean, those two that you talked last about, they were the last two, but Zoe was like a month and a half ago. So I feel deeply honored that you have been accompanying.
I think everyone should listen to them if they have the occasion.
What Selen is talking about is past Migrant Women Reality Watch interviews that we have, and you can find those in our YouTube channel. And I have put here on the chat as well the Bloomsbury, website to the book that you contributed to, and I think I found the interview that you were talking about, the discussion between patient and doula. It's by Amy Gilliland, I think. So I've put it here on the chat.
That's the article I translated into Turkish.
Amazing. We are very honored to have such a member of yours, and I hope that in some years, when we meet again, that you will be having maybe your own birth house. Maybe I'm not deciding for you, but I can really see a birth house being led by you, because besides being an amazing practitioner, you are also a very sweet, caring. Your voice is very soothing. So I would imagine, if I ever were to have children, I don't think so, but if I ever had, I would like you to accompany me.
Nice. Thank you for the compliment.
You are welcome. It comes from the bottom of my heart.
I think just for the birth houses, I think there is just to finish, because this is another debate, but between the midwives and doulas in some countries, there is like a misunderstanding. I mean, a kind of a misunderstanding and problem that I think is really, really a misunderstanding, because there is no competition. There are like two different roles which are working together, which should be working together for the main for the same purpose, which is the happiness and the health of the baby and the mother and the family. And so I think a collaboration between a doula, between the doulas, midwives, and obstetrical gynecologists, and held all parts, nurses, and all. I think it's like it should be a collaboration, a cooperation, and a solidarity rather than a competition.
Selen, I know I said it was the end, but do you think you have time for one question that I saw here on the chat and that just popped up but was asked actually a while ago?
I have time. I have time. I don't know if we are going in the midst of the of the recording, but for
no,
me,
it's me who puts the limits so as I don't tire
as you wish.
the person who is interviewed. But I think it's a very interesting question. It's how, yeah, basically it's got like 3 questions in one. But do you wait? Would as part of the doula obligations, or I don't know, let's say responsibilities, would it be to support women that are suffering from postpartum depression, no matter the cause of that postpartum depression? Does your work involve supporting women in that postpartum trauma?
I think doulas are very important. Actually, in our training, there is like a doula support before birth, during birth, and after birth, postnatal doula. And that's the postnatal doula part is something that I really find very important, because we always concentrate on the childbirth, and the right after childbirth, generally women find themselves we are not prepared. I mean, I haven't seen any woman who was prepared for I saw women who were prepared for birth, who were prepared for pregnancy, but who were prepared for the period, and we don't talk about it because, well, of many reasons. So postnatal period is very important. And among the women, as I said, that I interviewed, there were women who went through postnatal depression. I think in my experience, I might have gone through kind of a postnatal, I don't know, depression or what, but I know it from my experience also after childbirth. And yes, doulas, first of all, they can help women understand that they are going through a difficult time. But we are not, if in case, unless we had a special education of psychology or therapy, we are not there to make a therapy. That's just, we should underline. It's not the responsibility, and it's beyond the ethics. So we cannot make therapy. But if the woman is, but we have questions, for example, like I have questions to ask, to see with the woman who gave birth, to go through, and those questions actually finally might lead to the conclusion that it would be better if she gets help from a psychologist or related therapist. So I don't know if it's clear, but it's very, I mean, in the experiences that yes, if there is a doula support, if in general, if there is a support which is understanding and which is there for help the woman physically and also emotionally, there is less postnatal depression. But I mean, I didn't make a research, especially like a quantitative research, and it needs to be done, a survey on this. But there is no survey that I made in Turkey about this. Yeah, it should be done.
And the second part of the question is, how do you understand, or how do you view like the roots of what would cause postpartum depression? Do you have any insight on that? The root causes of postpartum depression, based on your experience of what you have seen with the woman that you have accompanied.
Okay, it's a huge topic. We could speak another hour on this, but okay, there are some things that are known already. For example, as I said, if women have already gone through sexual abuse, childbirth experience might trigger the trauma and lead to postnatal depression. Another, what we have been talking today, it's the violence. If women are going through violence during childbirth or during pregnancy by their partners or in the hospital, that also might lead to postnatal depression. Of course, if we have a tendency to depression because of this reason or another reason, that might also be triggered after birth, because and also support. If women are not in an environment where they feel supported, they might have the tendency to be, and support. Sometimes people think that it's just, which is important, just cooking for the women is important, that she's taking care of the baby and somebody has to cook and do the housework. This is important, but also support, emotional support, love. Like it's a actually Dana Raphael, who first used the word doula, she used the word actually to express doula as a mothering the mother. Mm-hmm. So actually the mother needs to be mothered, because actually it's not only the physical work, it's not just the hormonal thing, but it's also a important transition in her life. She's maybe closing one page in her life and she's becoming she's taking another role that she had, especially first-time mothers, that she had never done before, and it's a huge responsibility, because it's like this. I mean, I see it with all the women I interviewed. There's kind of an enormous responsibility, which sometimes is accompanied by feelings of culpa. The French word is coming now.
Yeah,
guilt. Yeah, they feel like it's like, what if something happens? It's like they feel like if something happens to the baby, it's gonna be my fault, and so it's really creating a big emotional and psychological pressure on the women. Will I be able to take care of this thing? That and also it's the end of something. It's end of our. We are never going to be as free again.
Exactly.
I mean, it is a reality. Like, I mean, one young woman that I interviewed, she was like 20, and she said, like, she wanted to have that baby, but then when she saw it, and she was like, oh shit, what am I gonna do? Like, I'm fucked up. But that's the word she used, because she hadn't thought about it. She thought, okay, I'm gonna be a baby mother. It's so cool. And then there it's full of responsibilities, and that's really not easy. And we need, it's a new role that we need to adapt. And for that, they need to be supported. And also, okay, that's another story, but fathers also, they are taking another role. So, and then we say, okay, the father is, if he's there already, and there are also single mothers, which is another situation. But yeah, it's not easy for the fathers as well.
Thank you for taking more of your time to answer that. And I want to really thank you for the insight. I learned personally a lot, because obviously I'm not a mother. I mean, my mother is a single mother, but we have never really touched upon these things about birth and what her experience was. So I think also for young women, because a lot of us actually reject maternity and the institution that is childbirth. I think it's very useful for us to inform ourselves. And thank you so much for bringing this information about Dana Rafael. Now that I know who she is, I have more food for thought. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
There's
just
also go ahead.
I want to really add to this, because it was important. Two things that you said. One of them is, yes, actually becoming a mother, I started to understand my mother in a different way. And also doing this research, it helped me have more understanding, love, and compassion for my mother, and also myself as a mother. But actually, that's also important what you said, because I was like, when I started this to work on this subject, which was in 2013, I couldn't find much discussion in the feminist movement in Turkey, in the feminist literature. and so I was like, because we talk about abortion a lot, we talk about male violence, but there was, as I said, nothing really, no movement and no really much production about this. And one reason is that what you said, as feminists, we often have that, how to say, we don't take that role very much as feminists, because maternity is not, we don't take it as part of our agenda. But of course, there are many feminists who became mothers or who find themselves mothers, and who, and so I think it's important. So I was writing about this, that why didn't the feminist movement up until today take into its agenda the all these questions around childbirth in Turkey.
Mm-hmm. I think that the rejection of motherhood should not prevent us from actually analyzing it and see the condition in which it is performed and how women are giving birth and everything that we talked about today, because it is the reality of so many women, and it is why we are here, because our mothers in the first place, so I think it is something to be, for us in the feminist movement, to be attentive to. And also it's a good way for us to communicate with those women who are mothers, be it because they want it or not, despite of what happened to them. So I think it's something that we should learn as women to talk about, and not be
Mm-hmm.
only on that rejection side, but actually what happens in the dark, which is most of it.
Yeah, and I actually, as a feminist, as a woman who, as activist, when I was young, I never thought it wasn't part of my dream to become a mother, or getting married. But sometimes, whatever life, takes us into a place where, and anyway, even if it's not us, there are women who are going through all these procedures, and especially I think experiences of immigrant women, for example, or minority women, young women, single mothers, or women from lower classes. They are the ones who are really going through more traumatizing experiences, and they need more support. And it's actually really one of my dreams, to be able to work, find a way to kind of a support system for immigrant women, to support them during their childbirth experiences, and yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and advocacy, but I will not go into to talk more. Yeah, but it doesn't mean that, the one of the women I interviewed, she's a lawyer. She's a very, very, very tough lawyer in Turkey, and working for human rights, and who has a master's degree, and yet she, in her interview, she was telling me that she couldn't understand how she could find herself like in a kind of a sheep, like we say that, that she accepted all that was said to her. And she said, normally I would let nobody do that to me, but during the experience of childbirth and all that, and then she was like saying, why did I accept to be treated that way? And of course, it's also, there are many explanations, but one is that there is that responsibility of another being, which is the fetus or the baby. So it's not only about me, but it's also the baby that I'm carrying, and then the knowledge that we don't think that we have about regarding, that's the doctor, he knows. So there's this authority, we give in to the authority of the doctor, and who is already there too. Anyway, he's happy to be the authority generally, or she is. Yeah, it can be a woman as well.
Okay. Thank you so much, Selen. I'm going to say it was really, this has been the longest Migrant Women Reality Watch that we have had.
Okay, I know I like talking.
No, it's not a bad thing. I just mean that there's obviously so many connections to so many other things, so many other subjects, that it's difficult to frame it and just stick to that. But yes, I really wish to thank you on behalf of the whole European Network of Migrant Women, and thank you for contributing to the obstetrical movement and for the adequate care for mothers in Turkey and in Europe. So I'm very, very happy that you are part of our network, and I wish that dream of yours comes true one day.
Thanks for organizing this, Adriana, and all my best wishes. It was nice talking to you.
Yes, I hope to see you soon, and have an amazing night. For those who want to rewatch this again and reshare it, please feel free to do so from our page. And from tomorrow, it will already be published on our YouTube channel. So feel free to share that and share the insights of what we discussed here today. Thank you, everyone. And we will see you next week for another Migrant Women Reality Watch. Bye. Good night, Selen.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Bye.